evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today, we are going to have a great conversation about some of the fundamentals of marketing that haven't changed and move all the way through to automation and artificial intelligence. And I want to welcome to the show, Juli Baranik. Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emmanuel. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, it's great. Will you share a little bit more about your background so we can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, totally. And as probably most people, I have a very winding background and a winding path that took me to where I am today, but I've brought bits and pieces of it with me. So oddly enough, I started my career as a registered nurse in high-risk labor and delivery and love that, was, really passionate about that, but was very creative and techie. So I started a business on the side. And then that shifted into just really diving headfirst and in love with IT and marketing. Did consulting for Fortune 500s around the world in the consulting that I did with them. And then kind of did another pivot and fell in love with podcasting. So I've actually taken all of that, oddly enough, and really focus on helping people build relationships through podcasting and also having really solid underlying systems that free up people's time using automation and ultimately, again, building relationships through all of it.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. And I think probably the most important part is building relationships. And I think that is one of the things that that kind of gets lost by some of the marketers and the inexperienced marketers in 2024, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do, especially as we seem to be moving faster and faster by the day, and we tend to leave people behind. So I agree with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think I'm in love with podcasting also because I'm a content marketing geek. Like that's just what I love. I love producing content and having finished product. And the podcast as the hub of the content marketing wheel is such a beautiful synergy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I kind of stumbled on it. I don't know how your background and how you got into it, but yeah, I agree. It's a very raw, real way to connect with people in a way that you wouldn't normally have the opportunity.
Well, what are some of the ways that you're able to start and develop relationships in online and in digital spaces?
Yeah, 100%. So of course, podcasting is probably one of the biggest ones, and it also opens up massive doors for you. So I always like to think I have my own podcast as well, the Seven Figure Builder Show. And just in having my own podcast, I'm able to connect and have brilliant, very, very successful people around the world as guests on my show that I never would have the opportunity, frankly, to connect with,
Yeah,
right? Like
right.
the amount that it would cost me to buy an hour of somebody's time of, ridiculously successful people and be able to ask them anything that I want
Right.
is priceless and would cost me a fortune, frankly.
Right.
So for me, it's been like a total cheat sheet of how to like get into the minds of people that have already done it before me. So I don't have to make it up, frankly. But with that, to the relationship piece, I've used it to build really solid relationships with those people where I have their personal cell phone, their phone number, like they text me, they call me out of the blue, they check up on me, we give referrals to each other. Like we have a genuine vested interest in each other's success because of the format of podcast and just going in with the intention of building relationships. So there's lots of ways, and I'm happy to dig into lots of them. But of course, that's one of my favorites.
Well, I'm going to get a little soft here and just say, let your intention is to build relationships, right? And so, just that intention is much different than just trying to sell a product or service and move on to the next person.
Yeah.
So I think that's really a powerful concept from what you just said. For somebody who hasn't yet got into podcasting, and a lot of people haven't yet, what
Yeah.
are some like kind of how would you recommend that somebody starts to conceive of their podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So I like to begin with the end in mind, quite frankly. So I'm a big Stephen Covey fan, but like,
Right.
what are we trying to accomplish, right? What is your goal? Is it to get more clients? Likely, yes. Who are those people? Who are your dream clients? Like, who, when you think of who is that person that you would love to have 1,000 more of in your world?
Yeah.
It's really important that we get grand, and we hear this a lot of like, who is your dream person, right? But it's really important because that's the person you wanna call into your world. So I always start with all my clients and myself, and I revisit this periodically of who is that person that I wanna call into my world? Where do they live, right? Is it in the podcasting realm? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's on Facebook, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's LinkedIn. Like for me, LinkedIn has been another massive relationship building tool when done well.
Sure.
You can really get very specific and target people very granularly, but you can't do that until you know who you're actually looking for, right?
Right. Yeah.
So no matter where you are, what you're trying to do, start with who is it that you're trying to call into your world? Where are they? What are they concerned about? And to your point earlier, in all of it, focus your intention on a give, right? Like that's another
Yeah.
beautiful thing about podcasting is everything that I do in it is a give, right? My time here. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here to build a relationship with you, right?
Right.
And if I can impart some of my wisdom and my, bumps along the road with people to make their lives easier, amazing, right? But when you go into any conversation, whether it's in the DMs, it's in person, it's on the phone, it's on a podcast, with the intention to sell something, people sniff that a mile away.
Yep. For sure.
So the intention is massive. So I would say start with the end in mind. What are you trying to accomplish? Who is it that you're trying to call into your world? How is it that you're going to actually help them? And again, I go through this with all my clients one on one directly because it's so foundational and so important, and everything hinges on that.
I love it. I've had a lot of these conversations with marketers, and we are all very focused on develop your ideal client profile, and then develop your content map and how
Mhm.
you're gonna help people self-educate in that process, that ideal client process, right? So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Um, so how about just tactically, what
Mhm.
do we got to do in order to create a what are the elements and the pieces of a podcast that you recommend from the startup?
Yep, totally. So the other layer with that, just to add in, because it ties in with your question, is what is your unique lens on your area of
Mhm.
expertise,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And why do other people care about that? Because
Right.
all those pieces need to be aligned for it to actually work. Otherwise, you're going to be beating your head against the wall for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
So once you're clear on all that, then I always encourage people to think about, who you're after, you know what you're trying to do. When you're wanting to do a podcast, what are the things other people care about?
Yeah.
Right. So for me, my very clear, pathway in my podcast was I want to talk to the most successful people that I can get my hands on. So it was the Seven Figure Builder Show. I want the shortcuts of what people did before me. And the people that I wanted to serve were 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
Because that's where I knew that I could help them with my expertise, right? And a lot of us have a winding path to get there. You think like low ticket offer, early beginning people are the people you want to help. You realize that that's a very painful path to walk. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where all these pieces have to connect, right?
Right.
To
Yeah.
actually be effective. But that being said, in podcasting, I personally try to keep things as easy as possible and as sustainable as possible. Because as you know, and most listeners know, like most podcasters don't get past the seventh episode. Like it's
Right.
a lot of work behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Spoiler
for
alert,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
And that's where when I was doing my podcast, it was funny. I put a post out when I first started. I actually I got started because somebody invited me to be a guest on their show as the queen of automation. I'm like, I've
Yeah.
never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I know my stuff, but as far as podcasting, I was clueless. So she invited me to be a guest on her show, and I'm like, this is easy. Like, it clicked with me.
Conversation, right? Yeah.
Right. Totally. So I thought, well, I can do that. So, that was my grand vision of, having a podcast. So I put a post out on a Facebook group just saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Anybody want to be a guest? And I went to bed, literally expecting nothing.
Right.
It was 11 o'clock at night, put through the post up, went to bed.
Big.
Totally. Next day, I woke up, I had 100 people, over 100 people that wanted to be on my show. I'm like,
that's awesome.
I stepped on something massive here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So when you get them dialed in, it's really effective. And so I ended up building an underlying system that I help my clients with to automate the whole guesting process, right? For
Well,
those
that's cool.
outreaches.
Let's dig into that a little
Sure.
bit about the tactics. So let's talk about from like the outreach and the calendaring and then the editing. Let's go through that process.
Yep. So once you have the idea of what you're doing, and you know where to get people, a very easy place to find good guests, like really solid guests, is Facebook groups. And I'm sure you know, but there are a couple that are my favorites. There's the podcast guest collaboration, I think is one of them. And then the other one is Need a Guest. And those are like, in my mind, the best groups that I've found for actual solid people, solid leads that are worthwhile talking to.
Nice.
There's a lot of other ones too, but those are my favorites. So you can just tactically, drop a post in there, and I encourage you to be really, really, really specific of who you're looking for.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Otherwise, you'll end up getting people who talk to angels, and then you got the dog sitters, and
All of
you're
them.
really
Get all
looking
of
for
them.
somebody who knows about azaleas, but
Yes.
they all think that they should be on your show.
Yes. And that's what was the aha moment for me, is people love to be on podcasts. So like,
Right.
that's the easy part, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, it definitely helps to have a thought through process, meaning have a form that they fill out so you can collect all the really important information. And I highly encourage you to be very strategic in that form. Wherever you host it, doesn't matter. Could be Google Forms, could be something else, right? But that's a very key opportunity for market research, to get important information that you want to know about that person, right? Because you've been very specific of who you're calling in. They specifically want to know important information about them. And then from there, it helps to set up a series of automated messages. Like, you can set up all this in automation. And again, I have the whole system built out, so you don't have to invent it. But what I do is I have automated touch points. I have self-scheduling, so people can go in, pick their own schedule, make it really easy. All the important information that they need to know ahead of time. Remember, it's video, it's audio, blah, 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 right? All that you can automate, so you don't have to do it. The day of the show, right? Have the interview, enjoy yourself, be present, and have fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're not having fun, why are we doing this?
Exactly. Yeah.
And intention streams through, right? Like, you just intend to build that relationship, and you'll be amazed at what happens. After the podcast, this is another thing that I like beat my clients with. But the most important moment for me after the podcast is, or rather in the whole process of the podcast, is after the podcast, other than enjoying the conversation, where I very genuinely tell people, how can I help you? How can I help you get clients? How can I help you? How can we support each other? Right. And usually when I say that to people, they say, well, nobody's ever asked me that.
Right.
I'm like, that makes me sad. Like, who are you looking for? Who are your people that I can send your way? And do it genuinely and use it as a relationship building tool, and do that. Like, I send people referrals all the time. If I see people that I know that want to be on other podcasts and I know they're a great guest, I'll vouch for them and say, this person's amazing. You'll love them. Right.
For sure. Yeah.
So I'll pause, because
no,
I
that's
can talk
good.
all day about this stuff.
No, I love it. I think it's good. What I'm hearing is that you treat the podcast like a highly functional networking group,
Mhm.
and you've just got these people shifting through phases of your podcast and networking, and you're caring for them as your client, even if just because they're a guest. So
Yep.
that's that's a powerful intention and noteworthy. So, um, how about on the technical side in terms of processing and posting and all those things? Where what are you using and how are you doing that?
So the biggest thing I can recommend if you actually want to do this is get help. So, and that doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, you look at agencies out there and they cost a lot, right? Like you don't have to go all the way to that route. Um, I I have team members that help me with it. And again, I try to keep it as simple as possible. So personally, I love Descript. Like I think that's an amazing tool that you can just drop in an audio file, the audio video file. And if you haven't used it, for the listeners, it'll turn it basically into a Word document that you can just literally edit like a Word document, and it'll edit the video at the same time.
It's nice. Yep.
So that's one of my favorites. There's a ton of AI tools out there. Actually, Descript will do a lot of the AI editing for you, where it'll pull out filler words, it'll find your filler words, it'll, adjust the sound quality, it'll do a lot of stuff for you. So you don't have to do it all on your own. Um, when I first started my podcast, I actually was started on Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, which
Wow. Yeah,
my
you're doing it by
background,
hand.
yeah, my background is techie, so I have all the techie tools. Like I just love techie stuff, and
Yeah.
it has a massive learning curve.
Yeah,
Anything's possible.
that's video editing. That's
Mhm.
serious business.
Yeah, and I'm like, "This is not sustainable."
Right.
So, it's where I just pulled back. I'm like, "Okay, what's out there?" The AI landscape is changing very quickly. There's gotta be something better. So yeah, Premiere Pro is one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites is Munch, to take a video and cut it up into auto AI, reels that you
Yep.
can then repurpose.
Nice.
And it'll give you, like, if for those that haven't used it, it'll give you a ranking of like the virality of how likely it is to go viral and just which ones are like the most impactful. So that's another tool that I really like too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you're taking the transcript and building a blog post and doing some
Mhm.
other mechanics also, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that again, I'm using a lot of AI behind the scenes. Buzzsprout is where I do my hosting. There's a lot of other tools out there.
Yeah.
When you upload the episode, it'll automatically create a script, a transcript, a title, a description, like all the little nitty-gritty pieces. And I've tried a lot of different tools to see which ones have the best output. And that's the one that, tends to do really well there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think the workflow is really is amazing in terms of like you don't have to learn to be a video editor. You
Mhm.
can push it up to one of these services like Opus or like the
Yeah.
ones you're describing and get a lot of really good content that you still have to go through and clean up a little bit, but it does 80% of the work for you, which
It does.
for those of us who were doing video before that, it is a very nice gift.
Absolutely. Well, and when I started, like I said, I had the 100 people that raised their hand. I'm like, I was very quickly doing 3 episodes a day,
Yeah, right.
which is insane. I wouldn't recommend that. But
No, it's one of the things. This is a performance, even though it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily seem like it, and it takes a lot out to do, especially multiples like that. That's the most I've ever done was 3, and I'm with you. It's not sustainable.
Mhm. Oh, I did it for months, and I'm like, "Okay, I gotta scale back."
Yeah.
But that's where, like I said, keep it simple, keep it sustainable. Whatever that process is, make it easy on yourself.
Well, I feel like you and I could probably spend another 2 hours talking about this stuff, and I'd love to have you back on, and we can dig in again. But if people want to talk to you and have a conversation about how they might get started, either guesting or hosting
Mhm.
a podcast and using that as the hub of their content system, how do they get in touch with you, Julie?
Yeah, so the best way is at, podvantage.ai is my website. You can book a call right with me, frankly. You can also go to podvantage.ai/quiz, and I have a free quiz for your listeners that it's not a quiz, but it will build out a podcast guesting growth plan for you. And it's pretty freaking awesome. It's like personalized for you, and you get it within minutes. So definitely check that out. You can also find me on all the social media, but LinkedIn is a great one. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I'll send you all my links for people to hop on. But just send me a message. I'm happy to chat with you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I hope you get outside and enjoy some good weather.
Definitely. I know. I'm loving the sunshine. But thank you. This was awesome.
Okay. We'll talk again soon.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again.